Welcome to the Lair, a place where interesting people you may know tell you things you didn't. So grab a chair and your favorite vice and get comfortable. There are no rules in the Lair, but there is Laura Babcock. You know her from TV, and she is not into media monogamy. Let's find out who else is in the Lair.
So you started this conversation, Lauren, by saying, I wish I knew everything like Graham Crawford does, because on our break from the last Laircast featuring Mayor Fred, and for our audience, you're probably aware by now, we packed 3 interviews into one night.
Wait, Fred was in that Laircast?
Yeah, Fred, he's still here. He survived it. Yeah. You know what? Fred said in his Laircast, yes, you can have many redos, Fred, we love talking to you, but Fred said in his Laircast that he valued the opinion of the public and of the new generation, so we challenged that by talking to everybody in the group, which we do occasionally. And I think, Fred, you were good with that, right? We still heard your plans to decide you're going to be mayor in a year.
He was way more salacious last time he was here.
Yeah, but that's because, it was on the back of the whole scandal with Bob and Peggy, and, everyone was all up in arms. And Fred, do you feel like you were more salacious last time? I don't think he was drunker. You saying he was drunker last time? No, we had one Heineken last time.
100%.
You were more salacious last time? So you have a microphone. Salate us.
What's that?
Salate us. Is that even a verb? I don't know.
Salate us.
Yeah. Lauren is saying.
Say yes, you were.
Lauren is saying this time you were a dud. You were boring. Lauren said you added nothing to the conversation.
I didn't say that. I said you were more salacious last time.
Lauren heard salate us, and he almost jumped out of his chair.
I'm happy that Mike did this now. I'll come back another time.
Yeah, for sure. He's got nothing to be salacious about
Thank you,
right
Fred.
now.
You're a gentleman.
But I will say, for those of you who didn't hear Mayor Fred's Laircast, it ended with Lauren Lieberman yelling, "Blow me green," which people in the room were wondering what the hell that meant, but he meant Matt Green, so it was a bad moment, and it wasn't sophisticated, and Mayor Fred said, you know what, I really continue this fight after I'm no longer the guest. So we accommodated Fred. He's still here. He's a trooper. He can take the Lair.
I like him fine.
Yeah, that's good. So we're starting a new conversation, Fred. Our apologies for Lauren. But now in the Lair chair, sitting patiently.
This is the Lair chair.
This is the Lair chair. You are in the Lair chair. Everybody else has a voice because we're inclusive in this environment.
Yes, very inclusive.
We are essentially the Twitterverse only on a podcast. Everybody can
it.
weigh in and interrupt and do whatever. Things can go viral. But now we have Mark Chamberlain in the Lair chair. And Mark, I can't tell you how many times people have said, who you should get as a guest? That Mark Chamberlain guy. Because people feel that your desire and propensity to engage in kind of high-level dialogue. I'm not saying the Lair is high level, but you like to talk strategy. You like to talk big picture. You like to talk about things beyond what they are, what they could be. You're kind of in the vision headspace a lot. And people wanted to hear that here in the Lair. So I'm glad that you're here. And I want to talk to you about the casino.
But
because
now I really feel like you're setting me up.
I am. I always set up my guests. Have you noticed that? I set them up and chop them down and then
Knock
build
them
them
right
up at the
down,
end with a
yeah.
big bow, and people give me kudos. No, what I'm saying is that, people see you as a visionary. In business, you've been very successful. You're extremely engaged in the community. I bug you about your recent Twitter thread for 10 days with Terry Whitehead, but you're active and you're engaged and you're intelligent. You kind of raise the conversation beyond the weeds to something that's, I think, always optimistic. And so I want to talk your casino position, and certainly getting started with this Laircast. We waited because Lauren and Graham were almost at blows about the casino, I think, at the break. Close. No. You guys were getting close. You and Lauren looked unusually intense.
I know he'd never hit me.
Yeah. All right.
Be afraid.
So we were delayed starting this chat because the two of them were like 2 more minutes, 5 more minutes. So they're getting intense. So I want to talk casino because I know you're intense, you're passionate about that. But before we get to that, because it has dominated every dialogue this evening, it is the issue of the day. Why do you could be traveling around the world on your bank account. You could be doing lots of fun stuff. You've gone through some difficult times in the last couple of years. Why are you choosing to engage in Hamilton at the level that you are?
I guess a good question. I'm not sure I have a simple answer to that. When I sold my
You're Mark
business.
Chamberlain, it's got to be complex.
I
Come on.
just, yeah, right. Well, first of all, let me go really high
Mark,
level,
yeah.
okay?
It's got a 30,000 foot
sure.
level and worked
No,
out.
when I sold my business back in 2002 and then left in 2003, I was invited to be on the Community Foundation. And I have to say it was 7 years of best education I've ever had about a community. I've always been a big fan of what it takes to grow a business, and you hear it all the time. It's really about the people, but it really is. How do you invest in your people? And when I joined the Community Foundation, I found that there was a absolute parallel between how you grow a successful business and how you grow a successful community. And it comes down to one really simple thing: take care of your people. That's where the ideas come from, that's where the energy comes from, that's where the inventiveness comes from, that's where the industry comes from. So you don't have to go too far or too deep in any organization of that nature to say, what's your strategy, what's your vision? It's make the people successful. And if you make the people in your organization, it's quite funny though, is that when you are successful in a business and you focus on people, and you make money and you're profitable and you're a successful business, they call you a great capitalist. I found when working with the Community Foundation though, is that when you do and try to apply the same principles to your community, you're called a socialist. So it's an odd, we like to label all these things, but when it really comes down to is that I really enjoy that. I like being engaged in that. I coached because I love it when you see the glimmer in their eye that suddenly they get it.
But isn't there a hybrid to those two dueling concepts, social entrepreneurship, or some of these other labels that are coming out, basically saying successful people who also have a heart and a passion for their community? I mean, people are trying to define it, Mark. They're trying to come up with these hybrid nomenclatures.
I have a hard time separating the two now, and partly the education, but also when you look at the businesses that I tend to get into. And so the business that I began in 1987, or at least bought into it, 17 people. Today is probably one of, if it's not the largest tech company in the entire region. It's 900 people. It's called Westcam. And
I think that's where I first met you years ago doing a TV interview.
And you look at the kinds of people and all the things that we say we want to have in our communities today. Because when we talk about our communities, we have to realize that we're not isolated. We are actually in a world community. And so when we start mapping out who we need to be as a community, we're not isolated to say we can do whatever we want and be successful. We have to do it in context of the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is watching. The rest of the people are going to move here or not move here. We're in competition to attract the best brains from everywhere. And so when I look at our people that we hire in the knowledge-based industries, the new location, if you want to call it, where it used to be if you wanted to have steel, you better have access to a port. If you want to have manufacturing, you better have access to other types of transportation and such. And so you can look at your community and your economic growth in kind of a physical way. Our physical way today for our kinds of people and our kinds of businesses is actually the community. They're not separate. They're not independent. They're interdependent. Because the people that come and work for me in our companies are looking for a place they want to raise their families. Right. And so, I don't buy everything like a Richard Florida would say, but he's pretty darn close to getting it right.
So when the mayor said something the other morning where he said, I haven't seen a living wage job come out of the arts and the James Street North community. Some people would say, I have evidence that's contrary, or what do you really know? But what I saw from that comment was it negates the impact that the arts community has in attracting those kind of knowledge-based workforces, right? From my days at the Chamber, when a company was looking at a new city to move into, they wanted to be able to get their workers to want to be there with their families. And so the culture and the access to arts and the access to recreation and all of those things might not have had sort of a net job that you could you couldn't quantify it, but it had a tremendous impact on being an appealing community, a livable community.
Mark, were you there at the mayor's breakfast?
No, I only got Twitters.
That's not an entirely fair representation.
I watched the entire
He did
thing
couch
that
it with.
But I'm talking about his Bill Kelly comments the next day when he
Okay,
doubled
then-
down.
then I'm not-
At the mayor's breakfast. Yeah, at the mayor's breakfast, just to be fair to the mayor, at the mayor's breakfast, he said, you look at the economic development impact of a hotel type thing versus the businesses on
but
James North.
Specifically to James Street North,
Right.
he said the galleries were about quality of life.
Right.
Miller Shoes is actually selling shoes and employing people.
But the next day on Bill Kelly, he said, I
but
haven't seen a living wage
let's,
job.
Let's talk about it. And a couple of points that I quite remember. Interesting, it was Max Reimer who told me this. when he was here in Hamilton. And it's a really interesting story, and I wasn't sure it was a true story, but he was just pulling my leg. But it actually is a true story. It's in World War II. You maybe have heard this before, where the Prime Minister was sitting there, and his I'm not sure if it was an exchequer or BP or finance minister came to him and said, look, we need more money for arms. We need more money to fight the war. We're going to have to get some more money, and I think we're going to have to maybe stop spending some of the money on the arts and culture. I know, Churchill, you're really interested in that sort of stuff. And Churchill turned to him and said, no, we can't do that. Don't you realize that's what we're fighting for?
Wow.
And if you think about, even in a business, and it's a simple comment, but it's a very meaningful comment, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's the culture of an organization, it's the culture of a community, where to have good culture, you have to have trust. And if you have that, you have people who are self-motivated. And we talk about how we have to be as a community. We have to be sustainable and resilient. Why? Because we cannot predict the future. It's not predictable anymore. It's changing too fast. And so your adaptability, your understanding how you need to be able to understand the changes and to affect and be part of those changes is what economic development actually is today. So that, to me, I find that is our biggest challenge as a community, is becoming that resilient community.
So listening to you, I have to ask the question, and people will say, you ask it of everyone in the Lair chair. No, I don't. I only ask it for people who I think could do the job. Ever thought of running for mayor?
I've had fleeting thoughts, and people have asked, and it's not in my thinking at this moment in time. I always look and say, what can I best offer, and where can I offer it? When I think of the businesses that we create and the kinds of communities that our employees want to live in, and where I can get involved, because again, part of my involvement is I just love being involved in that. I love being involved because I have a daughter who lives in Hamilton, and it's actually right now, her and her husband in their early 30s, they have been looking for a house, and they are now waiting to buy one to know if there's going to be a casino downtown. They will not want to live.
Daughter in her early 30s?
Yeah.
Why, you think he looks 29? What's the question?
No, I'm not
You
hitting
don't
on
want to date her, do you?
Are you hitting on me?
No.
No, he's hitting on your daughter if he meets her.
Actually, my daughter's not early 30s. She's 29. She'll be 30 this year.
But so just before we jump into the casino, which is obviously a huge issue, when it comes to your engagement, have you heard of the term Athenian pulse? Like the blood of the democracy literally pumps through your veins and your arteries. You once you have that pulse of ancient Athens, you can't get rid of it, And so in this chair, I'd say most of the people have the Athenian pulse. For some reason, we're drawn to give of our free time to discuss, debate, activate, mobilize, give of our time.
Don't you love that, though?
I do. It's my lifeblood, of
To me-
course.
To me, it is, first, I guess maybe it's simple. I love people. I love working with people. I like having intelligent conversation with people. I have a lot less time for unintelligent
Sorry.
conversation. Yeah.
We apologize.
No, so
on
far
behalf
we're going,
of
this is good.
Laircasts
This is good.
Incorporated.
Why are you here?
That's right.
Exactly. No, but let me ask that.
This is good intelligent conversation.
Well, you know what, Mark? He's a virgin to the Lair. I mean, no longer. Lauren has popped said cherry, but he's a virgin to everyone in this room has been here before, right? It is a different environment, but I'm not going to pitch it. What has been your impression of it?
Oh, again, I love this right now. I think it's a great environment, great way of having a conversation. And just like we were talking about Twitter earlier, I'm not one to say one is better than the other. They're different, and it's this amalgam of ways in which we can communicate. This is a communication style. It's a great one. It's not the only one,
Sure.
but it's one way. And when we talk about really complex emotional issues, we have to try communicating in different ways, because our transmitters and receptors, that's really all we are, you have to keep trying different things on for size. And sometimes you have to say it differently 10 times before someone says, now I understand how you're saying it. And so that's important, and this helps.
Well, the genesis of this idea was twofold. One was we were at the end of a cocktail party, when people hang out, it's 3 a.m, you get these really deep conversations. We wanted to try to capture that, right? We wanted to try to capture that.
Yeah, it's tape recorded.
Yeah. But we wanted to try to capture that a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more social vibe. But the other thing too is that our producer Rob said, Hamilton needs, and I think there are other examples of this, but Rob said, Hamilton's an important city. It's an important time, and we need to be able to have conversations that are longer than commercial breaks. They can't just be 15-minute or less,
140
or 140 characters. We need another alternative where we can just discuss, vet, joke, mock, whatever.
Well, that was part of there is and it's amazing how quick it changed, and we just came along like everybody else has. I won't say they jumped on, but they all seemed to come at the same time. But 2 years ago, there was just a spec, and there was a CHML, and there was cable 14. And that's the only thing that had an opinion anywhere.
But the neat thing about these sort of things too, and there's a really interesting fact, I think it's now, someone said it's like 70% of people who watch TV are doing more than just watching TV. They're usually on their Twitter,
Yes,
they're
you're
on the
right.
computer, or something like that. And I think most of us are like this. Like this room here is not just this room. We are tweeting. You are
I am tweeting
you are
right now what
taping
you're
it.
saying,
All that
yes.
kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I think these venues, and the exciting part of it, what we see today is going to be different 3 years from now, and then it might come back again. But that's the exciting part. We as humans are just dying to have intelligent, meaningful conversation for meaningful change. And the idea of getting civic engagement of this nature here is a good starting point to say hopefully maybe more people will vote.
So let me ask you this about getting into the casino discussion, and Lauren, just swing the mic to your smoke position if you need to. So I saw an exchange. I joke about your extremely long conversation thread because really it's unprecedented, right? We're in like
But
day
I
17.
have to say though, I just want to say that Terry Whitehead, I did a number of times. I thanked him for staying engaged in the convetion that long.
yeah.
Because it was
It's
fun.
an epic thread because
Yeah, it
Terry
was fun.
doesn't understand how to stop a thread, and you've got a counselor, and you guys are just going. But there was a point in the thread that got very, very personal, where you were saying, this is what I have suffered through personally in terms of mental illness. And he's like, well, this is what I've suffered through. And watching it, reading those tweets, knowing both of you and knowing a little bit of your family stories, to see it being included in that way in that discussion, I had two thoughts. One was, wow, that's very brave, because those were difficult things to put out there. And at the second time, I thought, holy cow, this is an intense, emotional, invested discussion. Like nobody was talking about their family struggles during Pan Am. I mean, it was a discussion around locations and what was a good downtown and what do we think about the Ticats versus this, that, and the other thing. But this was something that I think unprecedented. I can't remember two community leaders, and I said that. I Facebooked that. I said, holy cow, you got to check out Twitter. These two gentlemen are putting all their cards, pardon the pun, on the table. So what was
Well, I
that?
got a lot more cards yet.
I know, but that, you know what I'm talking about. That particular exchange where you were talking about what you've lost, and when Terry was talking about what he struggles with in his family, and it was like an exposure that I have not ever seen at a debate. So what was that like for you, and why are you invested to that level on this?
I guess a couple things. I having been on the Community Foundation for 7 years, and then I was on the National Council of Welfare. I've had the opportunity to have been invited to, I think, about 5 or 6, maybe 7 cities across Canada now to speak on poverty, the issues of poverty. With the province, I was on the committee that was responsible for implementing their plan to date. So I've read a lot, and whether it be social determinants of health and its impact, the amount of mental health and mental illness, and I mentioned on the Twitter that I had both a brother and a son who's passed away from mental health issues in the form of suicide, which is kind of the ultimate issue with mental illness. It is the finality, and
heart-wrenching to see you bring that out.
And it's an ugly disease. But when you look at the amount of, and what we've learned around poverty, what we've learned in Hamilton, what we've learned through the Code Red, when we look at what the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and it's something that Terry and Whitehead and I got into, And he asked us, what's my expertise in that? I said, well, I think I've read just about every report and been invited to, and spoken with the folks and the senators that have put together these very meaningful documents, right to the World Health Organization. I have a wife who's a medical doctor. I have a daughter who studied and has taught me in the area of mental health, but also in the social determinants of health. She's a health promotion and now getting her nursing degree. So I've been steeped in the health context of this whole thing too. But then the human rights context of it. And what you find with mental health is that it is way behind. Now, we're way ahead of when my brother passed away in 1992 in terms of the stigma, in terms of and you even see the commercials now. As we move up to the week, and you maybe know which week it is, but it's in February, the Let's Talk. And,
Sam, you probably know, she works with mental
yeah, and so it is one of those diseases that is today still decades behind most disease because of the nature of it, the misunderstanding of it. It was only in the 70s that doctors began to even realize that children at the age of 3 could actually suffer depression. So our understanding then, and then the medication, or at least the ways to deal with it, and then maybe not medication and the ways to deal with it, but even the medical system itself, in terms of my son, who had been to the doctor 2 weeks before he passed away complaining about his issue, and no health system yet that's really quite figured it out. It's that kind of outlying disease right now, but one thing that is very clear is that it is beginning to move forward, and the moving forward of it is this idea that we have to come into the 21st century for this disease. We have to look at it as other diseases. We have to build in the support of a disease that has not had the support, and we see it rampant in the conversation around the casino. If I hear one more time this idea that addiction, gambling, and addictions is a choice, it drives you bonkers. And it's this idea like saying that cancer is a choice. And it's just a complete misunderstanding of the disease. And so when we start talking about this sort of stuff, and yes, I am steeped in it, I understand it, I've lived it, and to simply dismiss that part of it when our entire medical profession, you see, well, it's only a few people. Yeah, it's a few people that happen to be the presidents of the healthcare profession.
Yeah.
And I happen to be I'm a co-chair of the campaign for St. Joe's, where a big part of the monies that we're raising is for mental health and the facility. When you look at it, and it's literally kind of dismissed as being, well, it's only 1%. It's only 1 to 3%. What, you mean 5,000 to 15,000 people don't matter? The number of additional suicides don't matter.
I heard a radio
Number of
host-
suicide attempts don't matter. I just find it to be a very, very bizarre conversation.
I heard a radio host, Scott Thompson. Sorry, Matt, don't get too upset. your hero of the day. But I heard Scott Thompson do a rant the other day about the casino, and which is, his purview, his show. He gets to do a rant. But one of the things he said is, and he can get mad at me if I'm misquoting him here, but he said, so 1 to 3% have problems. So we deal with them with their problems, but it doesn't stop the other 97% of us. And I think when you hear this 1 to 3%, forget about the argument I've tried to make that it represents a third of theology's revenues. So they're going to try to promote and exploit that because it's a third of their revenue stream, even whether they admit it or not. But when you look at, that's 500 or 1,500 people. And that what we're talking about is devastation of families.
5,000.
5,000. Sorry,
1,000
5,000.
people.
But even if it's one, I don't want to bring that harm to them. But 5,000. What I heard about post Windsor, because I was in Windsor when the casino was set up. I was working for the CBC, and I heard a guy about a month ago saying, post Windsor, it was the houses that went into foreclosure and the lines of credit that were brought out and the devastation to careers of people in the not-for-profit sector who had access to money and went out and gambled on their lunch hours, who were executives who didn't think that they were vulnerable. And it's not just the stereotype of some people who I'm not saying no casino because I think some poor people downtown can't handle it. I'm saying no casino because I don't think that we need to consciously bring something to our community that will harm 1 to 5,000 people. Yeah, but why exacerbate it by more?
No.
Why do I need to add to that?
No,
more.
but let's
Is it okay in Flamborough versus downtown?
But let's
I don't
talk
want
to
it
that.
anywhere,
Let's
but
talk
let's
to
not
that.
put it near a lot of
okay?
people.
Let's talk to
Yeah.
that, okay? When I started looking at the idea of a casino, I was not anti-casino, and I've been quite oblivious, quite frankly, to what's going on in Flamborough. I've been oblivious to the facts and all this here. It's only, I mean, I look at it, I think what's been good about Niagara not doing well and Windsor not doing well, it has raised the consciousness in our entire community,
Right.
in Toronto and others, and saying, you know, maybe this idea of government-sponsored gambling and the way we're doing it sucks. Maybe we've just woken up to it.
And the
But-
advertising.
But nonetheless,
okay, yeah.
when you start looking at it, and
And Lauren, you'll get your say, don't
my
worry.
first feeling was that, does this make sense for us to be putting a casino in downtown? It just didn't seem right from a economic. I approached it initially from an economic perspective. I didn't think it made any sense. Okay.
Right.
But then as I started digging into it and started reading about it and reading about it and reading about it, looking at the various studies across the country, and then looking at the different modalities of gambling, because we get this argument that says, well, if we're not going to have casino, maybe we should get rid of all of gambling. Well, no, it's not all the same. It's like saying pot's the same as crack cocaine. They're not.
Okay.
And so...
Did you hear that, Aaron? He said pot's not the same as crack. Lottery tickets aren't the same as a casino.
Yeah, and so I'll let you get to it, okay? Let you get to it, okay? But the fact is,
It's still advice.
you know, okay, I'm an engineer and I look to look at facts. I'm in business, I look to look at the facts. So when we started looking at it, I said, well, where do you find it? Because there's reports all over the place. So I narrowed it down. Maybe I'm right or wrong, okay? But I narrowed it down to saying, who are the experts in Canada? It's CAMH. CAMH and the Problem Gambling Center, those groups. And when you just start focusing on what they have done and what they have said, and then you start comparing it to what we would do for other diseases. And I am convinced at this point in time, and anyone can try and knock me off this post if they want, I'm happy to have the conversation. But if this conversation was not about mental health, but it was around breast cancer, I think the conversation would have been over a year ago. Okay? And so, to me, at this point in time, when I look at the CAMH, I'm not anti-gambling. Any more than I would say I'm, quote, anti-choice for smoking, okay? You want to smoke and kill yourself, you go at her, okay? But quite frankly, you smoking behind me and having smoke on myself right now, I think it's fucking ignorant.
Yeah, it is.
Okay? Okay? And so, excuse me, you can edit that
You're
part
the
out.
Lair. We're not gonna
Okay, this is the
edit
Lair.
it.
Okay? Yeah. The point is
You're not the
that
first F-bomb to drop.
the entire CAMH and their whole process and the public health, okay, which I find a lot of the folks that are saying yes casino discount that stuff, okay, but they don't discount any of the facts being spewed at us by OLG for the business side, okay.
In fairness, Lauren's here, and you know, and you're the guest, so you've had a good 10, 15 minutes on this. Lauren, I will not interrupt you this time. Respond.
Obviously, I'm aware of the background that you've begun, which puts you to the perspective you're in. And I intend to be nothing but respectful to that, as I am.
I'm happy to have the business conversation too, just so you know.
No, absolutely. But I generally sit in this chair to throw little pokes, and I can't do that, as I am an individual who also has firsthand experience with loss and otherwise. So I get that, and I'm trying to get there as respectful as possible.
You don't have to be respectful from the standpoint of your opinion on this here, because quite frankly, I did not arrive at my opinions because of my personal background.
But I don't want to touch that, and I don't want that to be a part of
But I
the
brought that
conversation.
up because
I'm
it was-
acknowledging it
appreciate
and
it.
moving it
I
on.
appreciate
It wasn't
That's
the
what I'm
notice, Jim,
suggesting.
That's why I brought it up.
So what bothers me about all of this is, with everything that you have said, and I agree, that crack open tickets at 50 cents a pop is not the same as slot machines. And the bingo hall, when it gets its slot machines, is not the same as hardcore slot machine players. But because it's in Flamborough, this entire debate has been Flamborough or downtown. And if in fact not downtown means no casino has a whole lot more validity as an argument to me. To say that because people are vulnerable, they're entitled to a higher level of care, because you are lesser than, you there become greater than, is illogical to me.
Okay, so that's not my argument.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. But that's how this community is debating this. Flamborough where we don't care because there's still the same slot machines out there.
What are the two?
Different, they have horses on them.
Yeah, but what are the two worst modalities of gambling? Do you know?
Slots.
What's the second one?
Yeah, you're welcome, Mary.
Tell me.
Horse betting. Okay, so but it's just to your point though, and I agree with you on a lot of these points. Okay?
I don't agree with that as a fact because
Yes, it
Dr. Richardson makes it very clear that online gaming is where addiction is coming from. That that horse betting may be the most second most prevalent.
Have you read in that location? Okay, so this is where I maybe fall a little bit different than a lot of folks. Okay. But I probably fall very much in line with what CAMH and the Problem Gambling Institute are talking about. Have you read their report on what they would call fair, comparable risk mitigation strategies?
I've read everything.
Okay,
that
so
has
you and
been
I are the
cited.
same place, okay?
Yes.
So when I listen to the public health folks out of Toronto, and they're supported by CAMH,
Yes.
they say, look, if we were to treat this like any other disease, where we're trying to mitigate the risk, and it's, again, in our lives, we know that to mitigate risk, you are going to potentially, not always, but potentially reduce the choice of some. And that is a societal choice. And it really comes down to a values. So when we look at smoking, and what we've done with smoking and how we have, like we used to have a Demorier Theater. We don't have a Demorier Theater anymore because we don't do that anymore. We've decided as a society that if you want to smoke, you go ahead, but we're not going to promote it. We're not going to try and get people addicted to it. We're going to try and reduce the addiction of that, okay? But they still have choice. When we look at a casino, and it's not just the fact that there are vulnerable folks downtown, and this argument about income and low income, all this sort of stuff, there's only really one fact you need to remember, is that people will gamble regardless of income. But it has a much stronger impact, much more impact on the low income because the amount they spend, even though less than someone in the middle range. Let me finish.
Casino or gambling?
No, let me just finish. Okay, gambling. Okay.
Thank you.
But gambling in general, and the fact of the matter is that they will spend more of their total income. So it puts them in a worse position. Okay.
I understand that
okay.
as well.
Okay. So when you look at what CAMH is recommending, and it's a very simple recommendation, they said, look, if we want to minimize the amount of harm, if we wanted to minimize the amount of harm to the folks that are going to be impacted, which is from a mental health perspective, it's not affecting people so much they're not going to get cancer playing the machines, but they're going to get a mental health. And by the way, gambling is a choice, addiction is not. And I'm sure if you've done the reading, you've probably read the same book I've had, Addicted by Design. Have you read that book yet?
Yes.
Okay. So you look at the design that we do to actually get people addicted. We're saying, look, if we took the same standard of care, human care, for this particular disease, we would probably follow at least some, if not all, the guidelines by CAMH. And what are they? You familiar with them?
Sure, the same
Right.
things that Dr. Richardson was putting forward.
Right. Well, she put forward their recommendations,
Yes.
right? So what I've not heard at all, whether it be from Mercantes or anywhere, they talk about, and this is, I call it, they talk about frozen in time. This is frozen in time thinking when it comes to public health today. Public health is changing. And where public health is changing is they're moving more to preventative as opposed to our illness care system today. We can't afford what we've been doing. So if you want to prevent, if you want to actually make people well and healthy, which is what you would do in a business, is what you should do in your community, because that's where all innovation comes from, we would actually at least limit the number of hours. We would limit the amount of losses. We would limit these various things. It's because it's the average person who's gambling, like you or I, we're not doing that. The people who are addicted, which is the 35% of the revenue of the 1% to 3%, that's the problem.
But that is an invalid conversation if we're not having it on a provincial level.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Because you mentioned, so where I am with the folks up in Flamborough, I think it's a matter of time. It's not if. I think it's simply a matter of time that slots will be severely restricted because they have to be. They're addiction machines. And if we treat them the same way as we do with cigarettes or anything else, there will come a time.
Mark, my biggest issue on this entire fight, and I'm not putting this on you, but we're debating the bigger issue, not personal opinions,
Right.
is that the way in which this casino has been dealt with in the big sphere of gambling is pretty much suggesting in the world of alcoholism, the issue is just going to be vodka, and we just can't have it in Hess Village. When you lock it down to one element of the problem in one region of the city, I find that to be insanely disingenuous.
Well, I hear your point, but if you take a look at, I hear a lot of these comparisons between alcoholism or alcohol. Okay, but the point
I'm
is,
not comparing the two. I'm comparing.
but the point is
restrictions.
But the point is,
debate.
the point is why do we need to add it? We know it's going to add significant risk to a population. I mean, think of it this way: if I were the president, from a business perspective, if I was the president of the OLG,
Yes.
let me tell you how I would roll out my new strategy.
Okay. Go.
And my bonus is going to depend on it.
Please.
Personally, okay? So first of all, I would be looking at it and saying, well, you know what? This idea that we can actually use the Americans on the borders to actually, fill our coffers ain't working anymore.
Well, that worked at the beginning. It
Right,
doesn't
work anymore, right?
Yes.
So what I need to do, I look at the stats. 35% come from addicted gamblers, 60% or more come from the addicted gamblers to play the slots. And that's where I make a pile of money. If you look across the province, we really measure our success by the number of slot machines being placed. And we want to place them everywhere, even in bingo parlors. Why? Because we make a lot of money on addicted people,
Yep.
right? So I've got a sure stream of money. But boy, that's not a good public health thing. So how am I going to sell that idea to the province? How am I going to sell it to the average person? We'll do a couple of things. $300 million of advertising. You look at the advertising, and it's all the what's it called? Maybe Graham remembers what this is called, but it's aspirational advertising. I could be like that. I could win that. I will. So we
Imagine the freedom.
Imagine the freedom. So we go out and we do all
100%.
that sort of stuff, right? But then what would I do? How do I sell the local communities that this is good? Because I need to be very close to high population people. I need high population. And I know, just by the facts, that all this idea that I'm going to become a mecca for tourism, we all know that's BS. You know it's BS.
Of course it is.
Okay, right. So we all,
But
yeah.
stop.
No, let me
Don't-
finish.
Don't
let me finish.
pounce on that.
No,
though.
but I agree. So we agree. It's BS. So all we're really trying to do is place a casino, because proximity matters, put it as close to the highest population as you possibly can. Essentially, whether it's by plan or design, addict as many people as you possibly can, because that's where we're going to make a pile of money. 60 to 70% on the slot machines are addicted, okay? And when you look at the way in which we are putting in the standard of care today, not one conversation. I'm sure you've also read every one of the last 2 or 3 years of the OLG's audited reports. I have. And if you actually go through all that, there's nothing in there that would suggest how are we actually going to deal with addiction. Let's put $30 million
Mark,
towards.
Please, pause. Everything that you have said would convince me that you should be at a provincial level dealing with this issue. What you've not thrown into the equation is, and we all know that the casino industry is leaders in garnishing as much information about their clientele as possible. They know what you had for lunch as soon as you walk in the door. And what OLG does know is that Hamilton is loading up Brantford and Niagara. Whether that's right or wrong or otherwise, just try and extrapolate that we've already...
125 million in Hamilton.
What? Finish your statement there.
Flamborough is generating $125 million in revenue.
Yeah, I know that, Graham. What's your point?
It was a counter to your point that we're not getting anything.
No, that's not what I'm saying, Graham.
Well,
Please.
what are
I'm
you
saying
saying?
is,
Is why should we let money leave the city when it can be gambled
we have a
elsewhere?
disproportionate amount of representation at Casino Niagara and Casino Brantford, according to the OLG, today. What is your argument doing to fine, no casino? How are we helping these people? What is Mr. Crawford going to
They're getting
do
a free bus
after
ride.
we...
They're getting a free bus ride.
No, that doesn't help them.
Why?
That doesn't help them. And I would find all of this to resonate a whole lot better if, in fact, anybody gave a shit about these gambling addicts before it was coming in our backyard.
But I do. So who am I dealing with now, okay? I'm at least I'm beginning to tweet because I know them, with Kathleen Wynne, with Deb Matthews, Minister of Health, with Ted McMeekin and saying, and I've had a lot of conversation with Ted McMeekin, that said, you know what? I don't agree with this idea that we would not have a downtown, but we would still consider Flamborough and not putting the restrictions that CAMH is recommending.
Thank you.
Okay?
When Sam Marula says there should be restrictions of close for 8 hours, no alcohol, and no ATMs, but only for downtown, fuck them in Flamborough.
Oh,
That's
No,
illogical.
you and I agree.
Perfect.
To me, but when I look at Flamborough and I say, is it Flamborough downtown? The number one issue that CAMH has is simply don't put it close to people. Proximity matters. And so I'm saying, okay, fine. If I were simply following the health side of it, I said, I wouldn't put it there, and I would also add significant restrictions, not just in Flamborough, but every casino across the province. And my argument to the province is that this is not a local issue. They've caused the problem.
Then we agree on far more than I possibly thought we could when you
Okay.
sat down.
So,
Absolutely.
But maybe where we disagree is, why would we add it to downtown? I mean, I look at it as a business. And one of the first things,
Let's back up.
Okay.
There's two kinds of successful casinos from a business perspective, like Foxwood. You've got movie theaters, major soft-seater, major concerts, an entire shopping mall, a water park for the kids, thousands of hotel rooms, and infinite gambling. Nobody is talking about that anywhere in this country. A pure destination casino. The second one is bring the casino to either where the people are or where they will go. Flamborough is neither of those two. Flamborough is half-ass on both.
Lauren, that's nonsense.
yeah, well, you know what?
Where the people can walk to or where they drive to. It's
But Lauren,
from a business perspective.
Lauren, I guess to look at it this way.
What's that nonsense?
When-
There's a greater yield elsewhere.
You're heckling well, but can you back up the nonsense claim, whoever's saying it?
Well, sure, I'm saying it. Lauren says there's two kinds of casinos. What about the casino in Niagara that has a worldwide destination that I've been going to since I was 5 years old, that I've been taking relatives from out of the country to since I was 5 years old, through my parents, of course.
That's where the people are. I gave that example. Yes?
No, you didn't give that example.
I did.
No, you didn't, actually. There's a
Foxwood as one side, and then either where the cars are or where the people walk to. Flamborough's kind of hidden and kind of bizarre. It's a half-ass endeavor. From a business perspective, Graham.
When Casino Niagara opened, it was generating $800 million a year. Last year, it generated $100 million a year. What's the problem, Lauren? What happened?
Seriously?
Yes.
Okay, well, first of all, there's two casinos in Niagara now. Then add Seneca. Then add all the casinos everywhere else in the province. Come on, Graham.
But take that just to the natural conclusion. If we have one in Brantford, if we have one in Mississauga, if we have one in Waterloo, if we have one in London, if we have in Toronto, and you look at all that sort of stuff, well, why don't we as a city for once come up with a different idea? Why don't we as a city actually carve out a different position than everywhere else? In business, we'd be looking at it, we use this terminology, we say, what's our unfair advantage? You just follow everybody else, and it's...
Let me interject for a second here. So I love the conversation, and I've sat out of it because I really think it's one of the most substantive debates we've had on the mental health aspect of the casino that I've heard in months. Do you guys agree? Absolutely. I mean, these guys are doing a killer job, so I've stayed out of it. At the end of the day, whether or not the doors are open to the OLG is a vote among 16 people in a representative democracy that we've given that privilege to, our members of council. And everyone has been clamoring for more info. You know, when the Spectator, and I've seen your postergram, when the Spectator asked all the community leaders, and a number of them said, we don't have enough information, you put out a cartoon that said, let's hear from you people, right? So there's pressure on just about every stakeholder in this community to have a position. And even Terry Cook said the Community Foundation is nonpartisan, but on something like this, we had to weigh in. So we've got 16 councillors and a community waiting for information. There is a 400-page staff report that just dropped on council today or yesterday. Friday. And the mayor this morning said, and I quote, Bill Kelly said, well, it's probably hard for you to have gotten through that whole thing. And the mayor said, yes, but the general principles of that report are pretty easy to get and understand, that a downtown casino has financial benefit. And then he followed up with, but that's not my position. So the entire 400-page report that we've all been begging for in terms of the information and the content has been boiled down to by our mayor publicly as saying there's benefit to a downtown casino financially. End of story. That was the only thing that he brought, but that's what he said was the general principle. So here's my point. If we've all been saying we need information, including community leaders, and we have 16 people who are making this decision, and the leader of those 16, while he has one vote, he has the bully pulpit as mayor, has said it boils down to one simple conclusion, that there's money in a downtown casino. This debate, as wonderful as it is it going to make a tiny bit of difference on that vote at council?
Well, again, it comes down to, this is not different. What I found interesting about the casino debate is that it's a debate that, in the way we have this debate, is very similar to any kind of big debate we have in the city. The stadium, LRT.
Polarized,
It's
not nuanced.
It's right. And the reason being is that we have the wrong conversation
But
about
Mark,
a lot of these,
I
right?
appreciate that, and I agree with,
And
hold on,
so-
I agree with the premise that I think you're building, and
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. But what I'm just trying to bring it down to now is the brass tacks that these 16 individuals are going to be deciding. One of them, who's a business counselor, told me in the hallway that he doesn't want to say no to a downtown casino because he doesn't want to lose everything, because he's afraid that our momentum was going to go away, and a loss of that $200 million investment will be a loss of everything. And this is our business counselor. Then you've got the mayor boiling down a 400-page staff report to a simple conclusion that a downtown casino is money. So I'm just saying, is this conversation, as great as it is, going to bear fruit with council?
Well, I've been on the losing side of any of these big conversations. So what I say is not going to count. You know,
Do you get my point, everybody? It's a great discussion, but.
Can I ask a question that's just kind of, and I'm coming to this conversation late, and I by far do not have all the details, but this is a big question that keeps, okay, could we look at an alternative?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a problem. What's another option? I know this is a lot of dollars, and I get that, but are you trying to tell me that this is the only idea that we can come up with to generate this kind of cash? Like,
Down
when they're
on the
not-
waterfront by the
You know,
stadium.
No,
I was
no, no.
running a business,
No,
and I.
CM, if somebody from the private
Never
world
mind.
What did he say? Shut up.
comes and slaps down $200 million, you can say yes, you can say no, you can find a compromise. But what has no validity is, thank you for your $200 million, but please do this with it instead. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, enough, Lauren.
Okay, but
no,
whatever.
but that's not. No, hold on. That's not true. Actually,
However,
I'll
we
tell you.
got here.
Enough what?
Enough.
CM's talking about a compromise.
Okay.
There's
Not even
certainly.
a compromise. I'm talking about another completely different idea. I mean, if it's
Do
only a
it.
price tag,
Yes.
if it's only a price tag,
So-
if it's
But you
worth
can
this
do
much
anything.
money, is there not
So that-
something else we can come up with creatively that would create that kind of money that wouldn't create the hardship
Anybody
for our
can do anything.
community?
This isn't government money.
Yeah.
This isn't taking away from somebody
It's all
else.
free money, and it's all free money, and it's all free money. Lauren, come on, give me a break. There are OLG jobs, there's OLG investment, there's casino investment, there's hotel investment, there are hotel jobs as well. Stop with the double counting. You're being disingenuous in the first degree, and like you need to stop this.
So, but to your point, okay, this is where I say these conversations where we go. It does come down to, what do we want to see with our community? How do we want to see our community? For me, it was really simple. When I saw the damage that this is going to do, the social pollution of a casino, to me, it's not an averaging out. It's a gate. And you make these decisions. With a lot of people say, well, okay, I hear you, Mark, 35% of the revenues, maybe 15,000 people, but I can't decide yet. And the reason I can't decide, I need to see how much money we can make first. And I look at that and I think, wow. So if I came and I could invent a company out of the innovation park that maybe it polluted downtown, maybe it was actually some noxious gas, and it affected maybe only 0.5% of the population, is that okay? I actually asked the councillor, Terry White, I said, so what is our based on this discussion we're having around the social pollution of this business, what's our criteria going to be? What is the dollars to health ratio for the next decision? And to me, it's a simple gate that this is a bad industry, in Flamborough as well. And it does not help our downtown from a social and health perspective. It is so clear, it is so blatant, it is so many groups in the health industry that have stood up on this issue in an unprecedented way. And yet we're still having the conversation. And that scares me.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I thought you were going to.
So, but let me say, but
If you went to your board, okay, and your board put your business hat on, said, we're gonna do this initiative and it's gonna make X amount of dollars, and you said, I don't wanna do that initiative because of my social conscience, because it's not a good decision for our community, yada, yada, yada. Your board would say, great, so what's the alternative? And that's what I'm asking.
So let me
you.
talk about the alternatives, okay? And to me, it comes down to the either understanding or misunderstanding of how modern cities actually grow. We have a city today that is growing organically. Very few cities today you can point to that have won and grown because of investments in mega projects. If you believe, and I do believe this, that cities grow because of the inventiveness and the ingenuity of people. There's phenomenal writings today about why cities are so important and why cities are the epicenter of almost all of our economic growth today in the world. And it's because people work with people. Ideas, for example, don't grow linear in density, they grow exponentially in that. And so our biggest challenge as a city, and we're doing it, we are creating a culture in the city that is basically almost unprecedented in the province today. We are a go-to place, and all we can do with the casino is harm that because of the social, health, and also the culture.
Can I ask you a question? You've heard from Terry Cook tonight, who is, we all agree, a brilliant politician, thought leader. He's an amazing guy. And we've heard from Fred Eisenberger, not as brilliant as Terry, but but he's still here. He's a trooper. Yeah, but we've heard from a former mayor who is, by all means, a progressive thinker, who's had a big job at an urban national institute, so he knows something about building sustainable communities. And we're now hearing from Mark Chamberlain, one of the most successful business stories in our community. And so you have, a former mayor, a high-level, intellectual thinker. I'll say you all are, but Terry is known for that. And you've got Mark Chamberlain sitting here, who knows a bit about building business and community. All three of them, to me, have done different yet equally compelling arguments against a downtown casino. You're a smart guy. Is any of this nuancing your own opinions?
Two different answers to this question. What I really hope is that this does not turn out to be the compromise of lose-lose, everyone loses, that the stadium turned out to be. That if council can actually weigh in... that making sure that everyone is a loser is not a solution here at all. Perfect.
Argue and argue, so nothing gets done.
Okay.
But if we don't spend $200 million today,
No.
it's not a loose position though right now.
That's not what I would consider a lose. That's not what I consider a lose. I have nothing but respect for a difference of opinion whereby a councillor can vote to say their opinion if in fact they support a motion that locks in their opinion. So when Pasuta and Partridge say we're going to save the jobs of harness racing, which is nonsense, at least tie that into the motion, and then you're not just voting on political cover, you're actually tying in your vote to, please let me finish, Graham, you're actually tying in your vote to support an industry that is dead. If in fact Brian McHattie is concerned about addiction, then don't vote for Flamborough, vote for no fucking casino. They all need to actually pull the masks off and do what it is they want. And so the no votes for downtown is bullshit. No should be no, period. And your campaign, which I know is not yours and is nothing but grassroots, which is horseshit, is nothing about no for downtown, which makes it entirely disingenuous. When you hear this argument.
Thank you, Laura.
Perfect.
Thank you. So thank you for raising, if I may, Laura, thank you for Lauren for raising points that have not been raised tonight. No one has ever discussed Partridge, Pasuta, or any of the councillors. We've been actually speaking of principles and higher ground. But I take your point. I take your point that you want to politicize this. I take the point that you want to politicize this and demean it, and that's fine. Thank you. Thanks.
That's the reality of what we've been
No, thanks for doing that. That's okay. That's okay. Ours is a grassroots opinion, and it is a grassroots effort. And the facts don't support your case, unfortunately. But
What case?
You're right, you don't have a case.
no, we have no case. We have no case. You know what? Murray Martin is so famous for supporting non-cases. This is what he does. Kevin Smith does that. Terry Cook does that. Dr. Elizabeth Richardson does that. Please speak up. What did you say?
What's your name again?
No, who are you and what would you like to say? But when you have 20,000, if I may, Lauren, when you have 20,000 Orthodox Christians who have their leaders say something, when you have Anglican leaders say something, when you have people...
Are you serious? You want to put the religious leaders at the vanguard of this debate? Seriously?
They're part of the vanguard, yes.
Then your supporters need to follow all the shit that comes out of their kooky mouths.
No, Lauren, I don't need to follow any more than I need to follow all of yours.
It's not your group, and you made some sort of.
You can give us.
I know, but
That's
what?
what engagement looks like, Lauren.
Thanks,
You can-
thanks, Lauren.
I'll send you our consultation bill later on. Well, that's a compliment. To say that it comes from anywhere else but from the grassroots.
But back to one of the questions is, can we do more? Can we do something different? And you know what, and the fact of the matter, it is one of the best questions that is not being asked in the broader community right now, is that we far too often, not just in our city, but even in the province, we settle for mediocrity. And we settle for things that could be so much better. We brag about some of the things we do, but we don't sit back and say, could we have actually done a better job?
Mark, when Terry Cook sits there as the Hamilton Community Foundation, representing the offense that the Community Foundation has towards what this could cause, what's the Community Foundation going to do towards addiction? I'm not challenging, I'm asking, then be a part of the solution of the problem you identify.
But the Community Foundation today, along with Trillium and a lot of the organizations today, are actually funding the issues that are actually caused by mental health and mental or addictions. You know, poverty in Hamilton, a large proportion of what poverty actually is mental health. And I find it actually bizarre, I'll be honest with you, I find it bizarre that the family health unit that's coming downtown, which the mayor said was one of the major reasons why change is going to happen downtown, that the one major reason they're coming downtown is to actually be close to the clientele, where the clientele by far, one of their biggest issues is mental illness. It is the most bizarre thinking, in my thinking, that you would then, independent of Flamborough, I mean, because quite often you can make the argument that says, well, if we're going to do downtown or not do downtown, we should do Flamborough. That's another issue. I agree with you, completely agree with you. But why make the argument to make it worse? Why make the argument of bringing it downtown and actually making it worse? I agree with you. The horse industry being funded by the slots is not sustainable.
And it's also done.
And it's done, right? So I completely agree with you. But the fact is that throw out the argument of Flamborough. It will sort itself out. But why add it to downtown when there are other ways? You mentioned about what some of the things, and the innovation factory. What's going on with the new businesses and the new opportunities there? This impatience for years and years and years and years. We've argued that Hamilton is not on its right path. It's going in the wrong direction. We're finally there. The fact that your event, the fact that you get 70,000 people out to a street, if that's not a huge change, what is? That is renowned today. across North America.
just gave you credit for Supercrawl, I think.
Yeah, we have a.
Not you, but I'm saying is that, but your event too, okay?
We're all in that industry.
Right.
Yes.
So this is great, and the creation of business of cities today is all about culture, people wanting to live there, and I just don't buy it that a casino downtown is going to add to culture.
And I hear you loud and clear, but can you buy this? That people like the Mercantis and like Joe Mancinelli have nothing but an intention to improve the downtown, that they are not here as robber barons putting an additional tax on the, can you at least acquiesce to the notion that their aim is true? I know you disagree with it.
No, hold on, okay. I think most business folks will make the argument. I mean, I know that the business folks, when they were fishing on the Grand Banks, made the argument that we need to make sure we can continue with the jobs and we got to continue making the profits. But it was a really bad argument because they ended up outfishing the entire Grand Banks, okay? There is good business and there's bad business. And there's good intent and there's bad intent. And sometimes the bad intent is just not knowing what you're going to do and the damage you're going to do. Right now, to suggest that it's completely the right thing to be doing to putting a casino downtown, I would say you haven't read the health facts. If that's really what you think, you've not read them. And if you've read them, you don't believe them. And if you believe them, I guess you just don't care. So I don't like that type of business. I think it's an awful kind of business. However, do I think that they actually have a desire to really help the downtown? Absolutely. Then do it without a casino. Because then they don't have all the other damage and all the social damage, but they have the benefit of actually creating real value.
So gentlemen, on this note,
I don't think they have malice.
Beautiful.
Okay,
That's-
guys.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
I'm conciliatory.
okay, guys.
Unless they understand the damage they're doing. Then
Okay,
it's malice.
so guys, we're at, just before we take off here, that was an hour-long debate. Can I just, guys, yo, everybody. I run an easy camp here, but I still run it. Can we give a round of applause to Mark and Lauren for, that was intense, and not to bring up the Twitter sphere for the 50th time, but everyone on Twitter has been following I'm sure everybody's been tweeting out little excerpts as I have. No.
Twitter, just right off the
No, hold on, Lord. It's been as fair as possible. I tweeted. It has no. It
Toronto
has
Board
been.
of Health opposes new casino.
No, you know what? But honestly, Lauren, I've been tweeting out both sides, and so have other people. And it was one of the most intelligent debates I've heard on this in months, at all. So it's not gonna. We're gonna air this one first of the night because everyone's clamoring to hear it on Twitter. And that first means that it won't be until next week's show because our editor has to have some time. But whether or not that will influence the votes of council when they meet on the 14th this week to discuss the casino and may put a motion forward, I don't know. But I want to say, gentlemen, this is not going to be resolved until at least April, if not later. Thank you for everyone's passion and involvement. We moved this is the biggest proof of New Hamilton I've ever seen. So thanks, everybody. Good job. Well done.
Chats in the Lair is a Power Group production. Visit us at powergroup.ca or laircast.com, or check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.